Oh, so silly. Journey's a great band. Yeah, it is. Up and down the boulevard, shadows. All right. Hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ. I am your host, DBJ. And of course, we're going down this journey, wow. Or maybe delving into the labyrinth of Obsidian Star, a tabletop role-playing game being designed, seat of the pants in front of you guys. And I I'm often encouraged and inspired and given mind fuel by things from the outside. And I have a hard time dropping those themes and things that inspire me. And so I feel like I just want to share them with you. And follow me here. This tangential thread will circle back to Obsidian Star, and more specifically, um, how do we deal with science fiction, and especially the problematic part of science fiction when with mind altering and genetic modifications and being able to insert your mind in different bodies and deleting memories and things like that. And I think the two will fall into line with each other. So let me give you some background here. Joseph Campbell was an individual writer, a theorist, a professor that came up with what we now today has been disseminated into something known as the hero's journey. And that hero's journey is known as the monomyth, and it is like 99.9% of storytelling and a foundational element of writing stories. But the hero's journey doesn't take into account so many other storytelling uh, frameworks. And so, a gentleman who I had the opportunity to interview and see on the interwebs, and is writing a book that is coming out pretty soon, known as the Heroine's Labyrinth. So we have the hero's journey and the heroine's labyrinth, and the heroine's labyrinth is another, what I feel is another foundational method of telling stories that have a that tell the story from the point of view of a of our main character that is not on the hero's journey. Now, normally, uh, the hero's journey is very male centered, simply because most heroes' journeys are like hunter, warrior style stories, and historically, men filled that role. But it's not necessary. It's not a gender specific thing. And so I'm calling it, or I'm taking away the hero heroine, and I'm calling it the journey in the labyrinth. And I feel both of them have equal presence, even though this book hasn't been put out into classrooms and deciphered. But everyone that seems that has anything to do with script writing, story writing, that beats their head against and starts trying to dismantle the heroine's labyrinth, is coming out of it and going, yeah, this kind of makes a lot of sense. So yeah. Um yeah, get into Zipod and check out the virtual reality instead of going somewhere else. And the reason why I'm bringing up this journey labyrinth storytelling idea, and I'm going to show you some visuals that represent this, is that in science fiction, we do have our journeys, right? Our explorations of the universe and planets and cultures, and our heroes, put on their big boy pants and they go out into the greater universe. But we also have science fiction stories that tell an introspective story, an inner story. The protagonist that wakes up and doesn't have any memories. The protagonist that is and this is very much in cyberpunk and noir stories, the our browbeaten retired hero that's pulled back into the fold within their community, the science fiction hero that has to discover what's wrong with their own crew within their own small enclosed habitat or spaceship or something, or our heroes get trapped somewhere on an alien planet or uh, a space habitat or something, and they have to decipher or go through things. And many times, the horrors that they're experiencing are the horrors they brought with themselves, their guilts, their traumatic memories and things of that nature. And then, of course, we get into posthumanism, where we get into speculative science fiction of altered memories, of cloned bodies, and things like that. And I feel the Labyrinth story framework falls far more better into this story foundation in telling that story. And I want to use this for tabletop role-playing games rather than the hero's journey. So sorry, big tangential, big giant circle to get back to where we started from. You guys, as the co-hosts here, yeah, apparently the hero's journey is used by the military to get recruits and such too. Something I could see being used by various factions in the solar system. So it could be a fictional version or a layer. Yeah, yep. A fictional version for layer. Like two heroes' journeys. One is caused by the government NPCs, and a real one that can either be on the same path or have diametrically opposed paths in game for the players to have to choose and solve. I absolutely agree with that. Propaganda very much is a hero's journey kind of thing. Like, you're going to go out into the wide world and see the world. Don't you want to see the world? And it's like, sure, except I don't want to die doing it, right? All right, so let me share with you. Let's share this. I just wrote this up here. So, what is the hero's journey, and what is the Labyrinth? So here we have the hero's journey, and this is just a very, I'm using a 12-point system here. Here in the journey, we start out with the ordinary world, and this is a 12-point. I guess you could say, when I say framework, what I mean is, if you are a writer, or you're writing a script or a novel, a short story, a graphic novel, comic book, whatever, the hero's journey falls into this very generalized 12-point mechanism. And this 12-point mechanism or framework, if you start to fill in, like you're writing your story, you start to fill in these things, you'll realize that if you see a movie or television show that falls, comic book or graphic novel or video game series, anime, that may follow this series, then you'll see this like the hero's journey. There are other frameworks that are less specific, so they have less numbered sections in them, but essentially there's the same thing. And this is just for the journey. So we start out with the ordinary world, and in tabletop role-playing games, we do have an ordinary world. Hey, where is our character at before they go out into the wide expanse? In fantasy, we often have our heroes meet in the inn or the tavern, and it's basically, what's the ordinary world versus the extraordinary world or extraordinary world. We have the call to adventure, like, why are they going on their adventure? In tabletop role-playing games, it's the story hook. Why do the characters up and leave the inn from drinking grog or whatever, ale? Why do they leave and go on an adventure? And it's always usually, there's a lot that has to deal with the dangers and things like that. And I will explain what this thing at the very end, the Black Swan, is. The refusal of the call. This one, if you're writing a script or you're writing a novel, is usually the thing that makes our hero hesitate to go on the adventure. Sometimes the refusal of the call is worded by another individual if our hero is a big damn hero. And usually the refusal of the call is a mix of one of two things. Either they have responsibilities in the ordinary world. Hey, I got to take care of my family or protect the borders of the city, or I got to take, Peter Parker, I got to take care of Aunt May. Or the refusal of the call is, it's too dangerous for the hero to even leave. Like, oh, you want me to confront the big bad? I can't do that. I'm not skilled or prepared or smart or courageous or something like that. In tabletop role-playing games, very few times do we have our players make a refusal of the call. Usually what happens is a description of the dangers are given to the players, or if you want to go OSR, the players find rumors and such, and those rumors and that gossip, that scuttlebutt, is what tells the players about the dangers. Oh, it's lizard folk. Oh, it's a red fire-breathing dragon. Oh, it's pits of acid, or it's a a mountain that spews fire, and then the players find out what that danger is. Meet the mentor. Script writing is usually someone older, usually male, that guides our hero. But a mentor could be anything. A mentor could literally be a map or letters in a diary or something like that. It's usually something that guides our hero so they can kind of stay on the right path. It may be an NPC that goes along with the character. It could be someone who is less capable but has greater knowledge in some other aspect of the world. Crossing the threshold is when our hero moves from the ordinary world into the other greater, wider world of fantasy or fantastical world. So it's our starship crew, landing on an alien planet. It's the first time they step through a wormhole or a stargate. It is our characters wake up after, an indeterminate amount of time in stasis, and they are in a new place with new energies and gravities and languages and things like that. It's crossing into this new world. Test allies and enemies is usually the biggest part. And then for tabletop role-playing game, it's like, what kind of external tests are they have? Is it like a physical test, running, jumping, swimming, climbing? Is it an intellectual test like navigation or lockpicking or computer programming or fixing machinery, understanding languages? Allies and enemies, maybe they have to figure out, they meet 5 different alien species. Which one is their ally and which one is their enemy, and why is that the case? Many times in a hero's journey, sometimes they bring their ally and enemies along with them, like the crew of a starship, or like the Matrix. One of them, what was it, Cypher, I think it was, that turned against them in the very first Matrix movie. But sometimes they bring their allies and enemies with them, especially if they're like in a military group. We're still in the journey here. So the approach, the ordeal, and the reward is the climax. So the approach is like, yeah, we pew-pewed a bunch of minor guards, but now we're up against about to challenge our big bad. Whether that big bad is a Darth Vader-esque type character, it could be an alien brain, it could be an AI monolith that controls a bunch of robots, whatever the case may be. The approach is, how do they get there? The ordeal is the ultimate climax, and the reward is what do they get afterwards? Whether it's a magic sword, greater knowledge of the universe, they understand. The reward could literally be that they were Wizard of Oz, that you were already strong, brave, intelligent, that kind of thing, long before this happened. You always had a heart. And then these are usually shorter. Is the road back home, and the elixir. The elixir in the journey is basically the thing that fixes the problem that transforms our hero or the population when they come home. Black Swan, the Black Swan is often inserted somewhere in the journey, and it's the unexpected thing that happens that in hindsight was predicted to happen. So a Black Swan event could be is oftentimes like a weather event or a technological issue that happens, like there's a nebula with a storm in it, and all of a sudden it sweeps across the planet and the starship's in orbit or something, and then everyone's like, oh no, I can't believe this is happening, even though it was predicted in the beginning. Sometimes a Black Swan event can be very simple, like solar flares or communication blackouts or something. A Black Swan event could be like civil disorder and mob mob terror and gangs running the streets that our heroes kind of ignored during this time, and then boom, it hits them. It's like the unexpected thing that happens, and then you go, oh, that was sitting in the background in the first place. In the movie Inception, it is Cobb's subconscious that starts disrupting everything. That is the Black Swan in that thing. It's like, there's a railroad coming through the city. Why is there a railroad coming through the city? And it's like, everyone looks to Cobb like, seriously, dude? Like, So let's get into the Labyrinth. And this is where I feel like in science fiction, and especially in Obsidian Star, where we can use this framework to tell stories about the inner workings of our characters, and to have a framework for game masters who might be hard pressed to tell a story about characters whose minds have been altered or copied or edited or blocked, and the characters trying to recover themselves physically and psychologically in a story, and then go back into the journey again. But let me see what you guys have to say. Ordinary world equals a pod on a colony ship? Could be. If the ship itself is like the ordinary world, the everything outside of that might be where the adventure is and such, right? So yeah. Yeah. Drew's like, yeah, join the military, see the world, get stuck on the outpost at the edge of the solar system. Like, yay. Wait a minute. It's cold and lonely out here. Looking at TA's comment here. Yeah, same side versus diametrically opposed journeys, I think, is a great idea. The Yen King says, I constantly think about the Masked Minotaur since you first showed us the Labyrinth. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Masked Minotaur in a minute, and I'm going to, because what I'd like to do is take each of these like 12 foundations and then make like some kind of like a random list that gives us an idea. Like you could randomly generate a story and then use that and go, oh, well, this doesn't fit, but I think I have this other idea, or bullet points, things like that. But I like random lists. Masked Minotaur made me think of one wearing a black mask asking if one had considered a career in piracy. I'm not sure exactly where you're going with that, TA. Seems like the elixir is a possible class of MacGuffin. Yeah, I don't think we have a consensus of MacGuffin. Yeah, I guess I kind of do have a little bit of a Masked Minotaur on my my shirt. There's where's the easiest way to show this? Here we go. I like these full bodied shirts. This is one of my favorite Star Wars. I wish we had a better version of this, but yeah, it's my Darth Vader shirt. Yeah, and kind of, well, we're going to go into what a Master Minotaur is in a minute. Not quite a Master Minotaur to a certain extent, but we'll get into it. Yeah, the elixir at the end of the journey. Oops, gotta put this back up here. The elixir at the end of the journey is oftentimes the thing that is, for example, our hero must find a cure for a disease that's afflicting our ordinary world, and this disease is sweeping across. So the hero goes out into the greater unknown, does a whole bunch of stuff, and brings back the elixir. And that would be a little bit hit on the head, but that's what an elixir is. But the elixir in some stories, it could be something as simple as forgive. It's an atonement part of a storyline. So maybe our hero did some very horrific things, and when they come home, maybe they try to forgive themselves of those horrific things. Sometimes they're not forgiven at all. They don't forgive themselves at all. Our many Western stories where our gunslinger frees the population, but the gunslinger never stays home and becomes a farmer. The gunslinger leaves because the gunslinger sacrificed their soul using murder and death, and they now can never look back or attribute themselves to the innocence. They don't want to bring their evil into the innocence. Another character very similar to not accepting their own elixir or finding their place in the world is the Road Warrior, Mad Max, Max Rockatensky, whatever his last name. Anyway, Mad Max is that kind of character who comes home but doesn't stay because they don't fit. So let's move into and a black talking about the Black Swan event. Um, uh, Unexpected things that are expected. In Road Warrior, we had a sandstorm. We had a region that was supposed to be the Greenlands, and you come to find out that it's all nasty and oily and stuff. And then we get to our heroes get to the end of the journey, or what we think is the end of the journey, and it's nothing but dust. And then we've realized that, wait a minute, this is kind of predicted, right? Like it's unexpected, but then it's expected. We just go like, yeah, this wasn't going to turn out good. This is a world where good things don't happen. And we come to find out that going back home is the best answer, not trying to flee and leave it. So now we're here on the Labyrinth, and the Labyrinth is more of an intro, whereas the journey is outward, the Labyrinth is internal. And so we start out, and here's I took this from Douglas A. Burton's rendition of the Heroine's Labyrinth, and then reduced it down to a 12-point thing usable for tabletop role-playing games. So there are parts of this that are missing if you are a writer or creator, but and the reason why is because you can't write for your player characters. They're going to do their own thing. So, but what we can do is put things in front of the player characters for them to bump up against and rub up against, and hilarity happens at that point. So the Labyrinth, what is the Labyrinth? The Labyrinth is, unlike our journey and going into the outer world, the Labyrinth is a complicated physical and or social, and could be economic, place our player characters or stars will have to navigate. So cyberpunk always has labyrinths, and that's those like mega cities and arcologies and back alleys and things like that. Oftentimes the labyrinth the labyrinth is underworld, but it could be, mega complexes and arcologies and space habitats, and a place to navigate that is a maze-like, dungeon-like area for our player characters to delve into. Sometimes the labyrinth is, when our players come home, they don't recognize home any longer because there's been major changes. Post-apocalyptic stories always have labyrinths. There's always some kind of destruction. The mall's destroyed. There's an airport that's destroyed. They're crawling through a subway system. We always see our heroes seen from the back when they walk into a major city that's empty with vines and buildings that have collapsed. That's basically a labyrinth as well. Culture truce. A culture truce is the rules that our heroes are living under with the culture that they are living inside of. So when they come back, I got to pick something. The Expanse. The Expanse is a great, has tons of culture truces in it, and actually a lot of labyrinths. If we want to be if we want to be honest, if you've ever seen the televised version of the Expanse, the culture truce is, Earth has their own rules, the Belters have their own rules, and Mars has their own rules. And our heroes, normally haven't been challenged, but at a certain point, they have to figure out, okay, do I follow the culture or do we leave the culture? And how do we break the rules of the culture and still survive? And so oftentimes the culture truce isn't really a problem until our characters are called, they're called to adventure. Now, the Masked Minotaur is equivalent to our beast as ally. And a Masked Minotaur is basically a social apex predator. Oftentimes the Masked Minotaur is the most charismatic authority figure we can think of that's in our society. Sometimes they could be a criminal, but many times they are like politicians. They are corporate leaders. They are military commanders. They are they're often well regarded, well respected. If maybe they have questionable moral outlooks, but for the most part, the public looks at them as a guide. Now, it doesn't mean they have to like them too much, But usually the masked minotaur is one or more of the evil. It's our big bad evil guy, but they're hiding in plain sight and they can't be touched. Now, the difficulty of having a masked minotaur in a tabletop role-playing game is that the minute the players find the masked minotaur, they're going to murder kill that minotaur, right? Now, this isn't a real minotaur. The reason for the word minotaur is because the minotaur is able to navigate the labyrinth. They know the labyrinth back and forth. They know all the tricks. They know all the corners. This minotaur could be a crime lord boss, and this crime lord boss has connections on everyone in the streets. They have the law enforcement in their pocket. They have one or more politicians that they have blackmail on, and our main character or characters in a novel or story can't just walk up to this masked minotaur and put a bullet in them. Now, in science fiction, how we can get around this is basically having our masked minotaur in a condition that the player characters cannot directly harm them. Holograms, messages, avatars, right hand individuals that do things on our masked minotaur's behalf. And in a post-human society, our masked minotaur could actually be a copy of themselves that's inserted into a jacket that's used temporarily. Maybe they are using a PA system and just broadcasting their evil intents across a PA system. Often the masked minotaur is surrounded by sycophants and other people that if the player character pulls a weapon or tries to go after them, both law enforcement and criminals will go after our main characters. Sometimes our masked minotaur has a fail-safe system. Like, hey, if you touch me, these other things will happen. These other people will get hurt. These other places will get destroyed. If you don't let me go within a certain amount of time, a computer virus or a bomb will go off, or something of that nature, right? It will be something that happens within that our masked minotaur has over our player characters. And lastly, the masked minotaur doesn't actually have to be the bad guy that the player characters meet. It could be just you don't really want to do this too often, but it could be an individual that just is very innocent in the beginning, and then we find out, like, wait a minute, they've been pulling strings this whole time. And a good way to get around a masked minotaur that the players don't know is our big bad evil guy could literally edit out the memories of their evil plan from an NPC who seems innocent, and then reinsert their mind back into the zipper of the person it's supposed to be. And much like the movie Total Recall, where Arnold Schwarzenegger is the bad guy, he just doesn't realize it. He's the bad guy that volunteered to do this thing and then deleted the plans out of his brain, and then realizes, of course, we're following him as a protagonist, but then we realize that, wait a minute, he set this up because he's the bad guy, that kind of thing. Let me see what you guys have to say. Let's see what Oh, the Masked Minotaur asking about a career in piracy is the Princess Bride movie reference. Oh, okay. The Princess Bride, what great movie. Very, very tongue-in-cheek comedic. Love it. Love that movie. But yes, you just confused me. Yes, the Masked Minotaur in the Princess Bride was Princess Buttercup getting married to the basically a-hole prince. He's the Masked Minotaur as well. In Beauty and the Beast, neither Beauty nor the Beast are the Beast isn't the Beast. I mean, the Beast isn't the Masked Minotaur. The actual Masked Minotaur is Gaston. Gaston is the brutal, evil, social apex predator that is in the story, that everyone wants to be like Gaston until Gaston reveals himself to, like, no, I'm gonna kill them both. I'm going to be murderous about it. TA says a Black Swan event I could see if it's pre-alien contact or discovery would be a rogue asteroid from outside the solar system, like a Moa that had some tech on it, causing a massive flurry of concern by the solar populace, both government, individuals, and even corporations. Absolutely, something very dangerous or very life-changing from the outside of the solar system could be barreling towards where our player characters are involved, and then cause some other kinds of conflicts, right? In zombie apocalypses, we always have a horde of zombies on the outskirts that is heading towards what our player characters are doing. And then our main characters, our player characters, I'm calling player characters because this is a tabletop role-playing game. Our main characters are involved in something complicated. And then the thing they ignored the entire time, the hordes of thousands of zombies, boom, they break through a gate. They arrive in the city. They cross the raging river or whatever. They spill out of the, I don't know, locked container ship or whatever. And then the zombies are everywhere. And now they're just like, oh no, it's complicating everything. We didn't see this happening. And it's like, well, you kind of knew it was going to happen, but whatever. So that's the Masked Minotaur. Now, the call to adventure is like what brings our characters into the labyrinth. In noir stories, we often have the grizzled detective, and the femme fatale shows up and asks our grizzled detective to involve themselves in the story. Sometimes the call to adventure is simply, with the labyrinth being very personal, this is often where our player characters live, their home base. And a call to adventure could be from an NPC that's like, hey, cuz, brother, person at arms, romantic relationship, I have an issue and I need your help solving it. And they get involved. Sometimes a call to adventure could simply be dangers or problems that happen in their own neighborhood. A house fire, a building collapse, a lost child, a corporation that wants to buy up the land and the buildings around, and the PC is like, we're not selling our properties. We have people living in these places. I'm going to get involved and see what's going on here. Those kind of things. A house fire is another thing where, maybe our main characters, save some lives, and then some bit of evidence or something draws them into a bigger picture. Sacred fire. Unlike the journey for our hero, in the hero's journey, our hero ends up learning, either gaining new skills, getting new equipment, or learning that there's something inside them that makes them a badass. The sacred fire of a labyrinth is our main character or characters already know kind of what their sacred fire is, and everybody else wants it. Now, that sacred fire could be something arcane, mystical, or psychic, a sacred fire, the force, mental powers or something. But a sacred fire could also be political power, social influence. It could be a special program that can hack any computer. Often a sacred fire is a MacGuffin that our hero already has, a magic weapon, being able to speak an alien language. They have a special DNA concoction that hasn't been able to be replicated, like the Hulk or Captain America. There's something inside them, or that they have access to, or that they're able to call upon that nobody else can. House of the Dragon and the Targaryens that have the ability to ride these dragons is a sacred fire that other people want to take away from those individuals while they're at home. And we often don't see very often games where our bad guys, our adversaries, our enemies, our NPCs are tasked with taking something from or garnering the power of our player characters. But in science fiction, it's actually quite common. The one human that lands on an alien planet and everyone wants to befriend them. The one starship captain that has a starship that can, orbital blast enemies, and everybody wants the captain on their side to blast their enemies, but nobody wants their enemies getting access to the same individual. And in Obsidian Star, our characters have a zip drive, a black box in their head. There may be some information trapped in their head. The player characters may have one or more data cores that someone's looking to obtain. Maybe our player characters have influence over some kind of faction. Could be a criminal organization, a group of hackers, worldwide hackers. Our players could have some kind of a corporate power, or they found something valuable and somebody else wants it. And this is going to be the driving force of our masked minotaur, what the culture truce wants to keep out of the hands of everyone else, and kind of backhandedly control from our player characters. And lastly, this is also going to be part of the cult of deception in trying to ensure the sacred fire is in the hands of people that want it and not in the hands of people that don't want it. So cult of deception, something in our culture or a small faction of our culture has been lying about something. They are deceiving our player characters. Maybe it is the knowledge of data cores, but that they don't want to give away. It could be they have secret knowledge about our player characters. The cult of deception may understand or know where the lost memories from 3 weeks ago, they know where those lost memories are of our main characters. They just won't say anything. A cult of deception could be just protecting a criminal organization. No one is talking about the criminal organization that the player characters are slowly uncovering. They're like, why is everybody acting strange? And no one wants to say anything because there may be some insidious figure or figures or a cult or faction or military operation going on, and the players don't know about it. And so cults of deception are very, very common when it comes to literal cults, but it doesn't have to be. It could be politicians voting for rules and legislation they normally wouldn't vote for, and the players uncover that they are being bribed and threatened and cajoled, and their families are being threatened. And so there's some kind of deception the player characters don't know about. Guardians of the Three Chambers. Guardians don't need to be physical pew-pews, but this is a good opportunity to throw some pew-pew-pews, fighting robots and or aliens or Black Ops teams or, guards with ill intent or corrupt law enforcement or something like that. Usually Guardians are guarding a minimum of 3 chambers. And these chambers don't need to be literal chambers, but they can be. And these chambers often give our main character knowledge about what the hell is going on. One of those chambers may reveal the masked minotaur and who that person or what that person is. Because a masked minotaur could be an AI system. It could be the downloaded brain of a bad guy that's been hiding in the background of our player characters. Our masked minotaur could be a long lost relative. Like in Altered Carbon, spoiler alert, we're following Takashi, our main character, not realizing that there's a masked minotaur in the background. His sister, who is zipped into the jackets of other people, and we then go backwards in time by the end of the series and realize she was always hanging around her older brother, right? And that may be a thing. So the chambers, again, the chambers can be physical, like a escape room kind of thing, and make it very physical, or this could be very social, needing to navigate socially to uncover bits and pieces of knowledge or equipment or technology that our players need. Number 8, Beast as ally and fragile power. These are allies that our players may come across. Oftentimes, Beast as ally and the masked minotaur may come across similarly, or Beast as ally is an enemy that we find out actually is our friend. So, for example, a rogue AI may be a great ally in uncovering the military dictatorship of Mars that the players didn't realize was happening. Or Beast as ally may be a accidental genetic mutation gets released from a scientific lab, and it's like species, right? It's this thing running around and killing people and stuff. But then the PCs find out, they're like, we're supposed to hunt it down, and then realize that that beast-like entity is actually on our side. Now, it doesn't need to be in the story, but it can be, especially if our player characters need to go direction A, but we also need help going direction B. A fragile power is very similar to Beast's ally in the sense that an entity, an NPC in our story who seems weak and seems insignificant is actually pretty important to get things done. Oftentimes, we see the fragile power as like, they're the janitor, they're the bus driver, they are like a person working at a retail store, and then that person nods to the player characters like, I know you're running from the law, why don't you come follow me? And then they open up a hatch in the floor, and they're like, I didn't know you had a underground chamber. And the retail, the butler or whoever is just like, well, you never asked, and so this may also be a clue or feature for the player characters to find, to alleviate themselves of this wider problem with the culture and the deceptions. And because all of this is very much deceptive, right? We've got a masked minotaur, we've got a labyrinth we can't navigate in, we've got people trying to steal our sacred fire, we got a cult of deception that's in the background, we've got guardians that won't give us what we need to even solve the problem, and now we've got NPCs that we really need to use, but we don't know who they are. One is very dangerous and looks very dangerous, or may even be criminal, and then realize that they're actually not working against us. We're actually on the same side. And the other one is a fragile power that's like unassuming. So let me, before we get to the 9 through 12, let's see what you guys have to say. Let's see. So cult of personality versus cult of belief system. That's actually a good idea. Cult of personality versus cult of belief system. Although a cult of personality could try to bring about a cult of belief system, but who knows? My idea of going from a movie studio, turning a TTRPG session into a script and movie, to using AI to do so, both kind of further blur the line between player character and main character. That's funny. The Expanse kind of came around about that, right? It was a video game turned home brew sci-fi game into novels, into television series. Yeah, kind of wild. Drew says, personally, I don't like to call it the cult of deception. But go with a dynasty of deceit to have more obvious that this is a social institution that often relies on some tradition. I see what you're saying. More like you're saying more. It's more like a. It's an accepted practice. What you're saying is it's less a cult and small operators and more a part of culture that has been doing this thing so long that from the outside we look at it as deceitful, but within it's become tradition. I get it. Yeah. Now, mind you, there was one of the Star Trek movies, like 6 or something. I can't remember. Anyway, one of the Star Trek movies, 5, 6, or whatever, there were Klingons and Vulcans or Romulans working together to keep a war going between the Klingons and the humans and the Romulans. And it was a small faction, a small group, in this case, a cult of deception, that was causing a larger problem within the Federation and Klingon and diplomatic things. So I think both can fit, but I don't think at the same time. For example, in a dynasty of deceit in the animated series Blue Eye Samurai, I think is what is closely related to what you're saying, Drew, where the culture itself has this thing embedded in it. And I wonder why it looks blue when I highlight. What the hell just happened? It looks blue when I highlight, but it's gray on the screen. That's really weird. I don't know why it would change color like that. So anyway, but I'm not against you. I'm with you there. yeah. Blue Eye Samurai has some pretty nasty, must uncover to discover Dynasty of Deceit, and then our protagonists then charge against it and things like that. Okay. TA says something interesting would be a room that is automated, so it's the guardian. It is not a static location, but also an entity. Yeah. Don't take this literally. This is not a literal, like, this is what happens when this thing happens, when this thing happens, right? That's not, this is a framework if you were trying to write a story, and I'm using it as a framework for tabletop role-playing games. Drew says it was Star Trek 6, and that conspiracy there is also based on the tradition of animosity between the factions that want to keep the hostilities going. Yes. yeah. So, what I'm doing is I'm doing a compare and contrast, right, with what you're saying and what I'm saying there, Drew, where in Star Trek, it was a small cult creating a bigger problem, and Blue Eye Samurai, it was a bigger tradition causing a problem in a larger tradition of behavior that caused a smaller problem for our character. So it was like big to small, small to big, if you can understand, right? Like, because in Blue Eye Samurai, really, there was no way for our protagonists to change the dynasty. But yeah, unleash the dogs of war. But in Star Trek, our protagonists were able to root out that gang or whatever. Yeah, you're saying unleash the dogs of war. We're going to get to that. We're going to get to that. All right, so here's our last four. We have the Poison Apple, Shield Maiden, Home is Battleground, and the Black Swan. For me, let's go at the very bottom. The Black Swan is exactly like it is in the Journey. There's something happening in the background that normally seems time distance wise far off in the Journey. I mean, not for Journey, far off on the horizon, and we really don't have to worry about it, but we really should be worrying about it. And that these are things like riots, power outages, usually weather events, sometimes power shifts. So for an example, someone may be stepping down from their official office and someone else is stepping in. There may be a wedding or a festival. There could be technological issues, like a starship that is in a repair facility, and our heroes are like, we need to get to our starship, and then they realize, damn, our ship's been powered down and is dismantled because it's been, it's that kind of thing. It's let's get back to the Millennium Falcon, and please help me unplug our Millennium Falcon because somebody's been filling with our ship, and now our hyperdrive doesn't work, which seems like it came out of nowhere. But then you realize, well, actually, yeah, some other agents or some other agency was probably keeping us from being able to run away. And so I think Black Swan can be inserted in anywhere in here. And sometimes the Black Swan could just be a living world where we already know there's solar flares happening. We just happen to have a story that's happening with solar flares that are corrupting communications and things like that, right? So the Poisoned Apple. Now, the Poisoned Apple, in terms of tabletop role-playing, is not going to be the same as the Poisoned Apple in storytelling writing. So the Poisoned Apple is a weapon our masked Minotaur uses to bypass the defenses of our heroine in the story. Often it is an injection, a gas, a poison, a hypnosis, something that is like non-weaponry, or a weapon that is easily able to bypass our heroes, our protagonists. Now, for tabletop role-playing, I would say that the Poison Apple is basically our players are going up against a vector of attack they're not normally used to. So maybe our characters like to run and gun, but then a hypersonic sound is used to try to disrupt them, and our players aren't prepared for it. Maybe it is there's some weapon or tactic that our masked minotaur, our brilliant masked minotaur, is using that becomes the poisoned apple. Also, the poisoned apple could be like traps, non-sentient mechanisms. So our bad guy is like, I'm not going to fight you directly, but I will send robots after you, or drones, or like Thomas Anderson was saying, like it could be an AI entity that's causing traffic to be disrupted, and public transportation, and affecting communications with law enforcement and things like that. And the PCs are like, damn it, they're making cars, remote access cars are being chasing us down the streets, and the police are being notified that at every turn we're making, and everyone's cell phone has our picture on it or something like that. The PCs are being attacked in a way that they're not normally used to being attacked, maybe through reputation, and things like that. Shield Maiden. Now, this is very self-explanatory. The Shield Maiden part of a story in the heroine's Labyrinth is often where normally gendered our female protagonist stands in front of our fragile power, innocent people, stands before our main, unmasking of the Minotaur, which I didn't put on here, because that's a given, right? We unmask the masked Minotaur in front of everyone. We stand in front of people who are more fragile than us, and the Shield Maiden protects them, and I don't want to say sacrifices their life, but understands that if they don't do it, nobody else will. Now, you can kind of set this up a little bit for player characters if they aren't like, sociopaths, by having some of these innocent people, maybe from the culture truce from the very beginning, or maybe even some of our Dynasty of Deceit people that maybe our player characters may or may not feel sorry for. The classic pregnant women and children in trouble, it may be necessary for our Spider-Man to web sling the falling bus or something while they're being attacked by the bad guy. And this is that kind of a thing where our hero may have to pick and choose or figure out how to defend other things against our big bad. And our big bad might just send like robots after them or drones. And mind you, the Shield Maiden purpose doesn't need to be like I'm standing in front of a child. It could be a computer system. Maybe it's the data core of a rogue AI that they're protecting. It could be, the zippers, the zip drives of innocent people that where they were killed and they were stolen and taken by our bad guy. And now our hero is like, our bad guy's like, I'm gonna flush them out into space. And you're like, no, don't do it, or whatever. It could literally be preventing innocent people from being flushed out into space by standing in front of literally a red button to open up the vac doors or whatever, to vacuum of space. So you could set this up, put a little timer on it if you want to. It's a little bit forced. So you may not want to do this over and over again. So you may want to go back and forth between a journey and a labyrinth. But in the labyrinth, oftentimes that standing in front of the bad guy to protect the people is often comes back to most of this stuff at the very beginning, right? Where we can loop back our story and back around to, protecting the innkeeper, protecting the engineer, the mechanic that fixes your starship all the time, protecting the law enforcement that didn't even know what the hell was going on, but our players knew what was going on, and they got caught up in everything. So lastly, home is battleground. Self-explanatory again. Having the battle happen back up here with the labyrinth and the culture truce, having the battle happen in the starship hangar where our PCs have come 1,000 times before, having it happen in the the growth chamber where our main one or more of our main PCs, our star, was grown as a clone, and now they're fighting over, over top of these kind of things. Maybe it is the starship where the PC first stowed away as a child, and now they're here. Maybe it's a space habitat that is now empty, but they've come back, and our enemies and everything have decided to come back to this one place when they were children before, and they were all friends before, but now they're enemies. Home as battleground also allows us to, if I highlight all of this also allows us to return back to the places that are most familiar with our player characters. So it allows us to return back to, hey, remember, I don't know, Joshua Station, where everybody got together on our first adventure? Well, we're back there now. Or this is the place where, the PCs are like, let's go back home and relax and reheal and get new equipment and everything. And this framework allows us to have an adventure literally in and around the place that our player characters may find comfortable and whatnot. This also works very well for like military personnel coming back to a home base and then finding out that there are these other things happening in the home base, or a home base that's near a civilian population, and there's some conflict / like romance and interactions happening with the local townies. And then this can be a place that happens where all these things take place. And then the Black Swan can come in and throw all this into disorder, and then we go back on a journey again. So anyway, I wanted to share this framework with you guys and show that, like, I think there's a way that men can think. That's news to me. You're so silly there, Drew. Stop. But I did want to show this off because I think we are missing. This is just my personal opinion. I think we're missing part of our storytelling by telling the story of our heroes when they are home, as opposed to always going out for the outside journey. And I think both physically coming home, being around parents and friends and allies, and maybe even coming home and finding out home's not really what it used to be, and then telling stories about, like, recovery of memories and things like that. Because I'll go back through this and I'll talk to you a short rendition of how do we do this storyline when it comes to fighting for our minds rather than our bodies. Pink Klingon blood looks so cool in 0G. I remember that scene. Yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time. Yeah. Drew says, I think the proper Shakespeare quote from, I think, was Henry V is "Cry havoc and let slip the dogs of war." Yeah. And then it's been reframed since then. Yep. Shield wife, gatekeeper to the manosphere. All right, there we go, shitlords. Yeah. Jason 96 says, what is this? You got to listen along. This specific episode is different, but it's us sitting around a table talking about designing a tabletop role-playing game called Obsidian Star, and I'm using a framework in which we can tell two different types of stories, the journey and the labyrinth, within science fiction. It's a whole big complicated thing there, Jason 96, but yeah, that's what this is. Yeah, thinking man's dystopian sci-fi utopia. Yeah, all in one word. I love that. I need to put that on a t-shirt. T says that idea of an AI controlling things in a city or such was probed in one of the episodes of TV show Probe from 1988. Really? That eliminating excess costs to a company by having two green lights in that show on Probe. The main character, once he is into it, has to contend with it using a variety of functions of the city, trying to eliminate him as well. That's not the only time, but yes. And yes, this is a good storytelling session as well. But yeah, TA, that the story, the idea of a robot taking over a city or a centralized location isn't very new. I'm sure, like you said, the TV show Probe from 1988 and other things have been done. When has it been done first? I don't know. But when has it been done? Plenty of times. So let me go back into the Labyrinth. First, real quick, here is the hero's journey, right? We've got the journey here, and of course, we've got our ordinary world. Let's eliminate this space here. We've got our ordinary world, call to adventure, refusal of the call, meet the mentor, crossing the threshold, test allies and enemies, the approach, the ordeal, the reward, the road back, the elixir, and the black swan that can come in that overrides kind of all that we're talking here. And that's in the journey. But I think in the labyrinth, in the labyrinth, in terms of telling a story, especially when we have player characters that may have memories things they don't remember, things they remember that never happened, mind editing and telling those kind of stories, the labyrinth itself can be the unknown world. It's instead of a physical space, the PCs are, it's like The Hangover. The comedic version of this would be The Hangover, right? Movies where our main characters people are coming up to them and there are clues to what happened, but they don't know what happened. And that's the navigation. The cultural truce is very similar too. We're trying to recover our memories, but we're in a place where we're not really supposed to be disrupting everything. Law enforcement still might be in effect, or criminal organizations may still be coming after us, and we need to abide by that because we draw too much attention to ourselves. We'll never get out of the labyrinth, which is above here. Now, the masked minotaur. The masked minotaur doesn't need to be an outside entity. The masked minotaur could actually be us. It could be the player character or characters themselves. The masked minotaur, in the movie Total Recall, Arnold Schwarzenegger is his own masked minotaur. He was the bad guy that started the whole thing up, that decided to go undercover by deleting his memories of being part of this organization that was going to take out the rebel faction on the moon. And he found some evidence that was like, hey, you don't remember this, but I'm your memories, right? And then he finds out, like, hey, I forget the guy's name, not Kovac. I don't remember. It doesn't matter his character's name. But the point was, he ends up finding out what his real name is and who that person is, and is like, listen, I want my body back. So the masked minotaur could be the player characters themselves. Now, mind you, you can't play this card too often, but it would be interesting if the masked minotaurs themselves, but they're not evil. So the masked minotaur could be the player characters like, listen, you don't know what happened in the last 3 weeks. I'm here to tell you, I set things up. You should not be investigating this. You should back off now, turn around, and forget everything that happened. Because if you don't, I set things up that's going to make our life, your life, very different, right? And so the player character may not be evil. It could be like, listen, we went on a mission and we really need to keep this secret. So, and the call to adventure could literally be everything that was above, right? So the call to adventure could be, PCs find recordings given of themselves that told themselves, for 3 weeks, you haven't had these memories. I'm you, 3 weeks older than you. A very dangerous thing happened, but I need you to trust me, which is yourself, and ignore everything. You need to stay out of it. And that call to adventure might be like, I'm not staying out of it. I want to know why the hell I left a message for myself. Again, Sacred Fire, very personal. What do the player characters have? What knowledge have they gained? Maybe they don't even remember the knowledge that they gained in the first place because it's locked away in their brain. Or it could be locked away in a copy of themselves somewhere else, and they have to go after it, trying to get there as fast as they can against other entities, like maybe the masked minotaur or something like that. Like a masked minotaur could be a politician that's like, we've got too many people running around just body swapping and blah, blah, blah. We need to put a stop to it. And here's my first act as a new politician is, I'm going to shut down the zipper jacket facility on this habitat. And the PCs are like, no, I need to get back to my old memories. And they're going to shut it down and lock it down. And the politicians, like, nearly twirling their mustache, like, rubbing their hands, laughing at their own jokes, going like, yeah, I got you locked down now, PCs. Now what are you going to do? That kind of stuff. Dynasty of Deceit. Maybe the PCs are enforcers of the dynasty of deceit, and they don't even realize it. Maybe they set it up this way. Like, listen, we're part of a black ops group. We've been lying to you and ourselves this entire time. Guardians of Three Chambers. The guardians of those three chambers could be themselves, or they get past the guardians to find out something inside the chambers: physical chamber, psychological chamber, social chamber, meaning like they get past the guardians only to find out that within is yet another clue, another memory, or something like that that leads them down another path. Beast's ally and fragile power could be, again, it could be themselves. Maybe a player character is a badass, but then come to find out that copies of themselves have been living in and around the world, or the PCs wanted copies of themselves to lead a normal life, and they went off to adventure. And so the fragile power could literally be themselves that made different decisions in their life. Maybe a badass run and gun PC is literally an enemy, and come to find out the enemy is really their friend, if that makes sense, right? That kind of thing. Poisoned apple, maybe a player character like a Batman against the Justice League. Maybe the player characters came up with their own ways to get rid of themselves, to take themselves out, and the game masters, PCs are like yelling at the game master like, you just used our weaknesses against us. And then when they find out at the end of the story, they're like, oh wait, you're saying that the weaknesses you used against us that was unfair were the actual tactics we decided to use against us, because we weren't supposed to investigate the very thing that we're investigating because of the dynasty of deceit that the PCs are part of. But now that we uncovered it, now the truth is out, and now we have a whole big problem. Now we got to go on a journey to solve what we just uncovered to ourselves, which we should have never gotten involved in the first place. Anyway, you get the point. And lastly, Shield Maiden, home is battleground. How interesting would it be for a player character to stand over their own unconscious body in like a stasis chamber, or like standing over their relatives, because the PCs are like 5 generations older than their own relatives that they've been watching all this time, because the player characters are effectively technologically immortal, but the other family members don't know that. Or it could be a big social experiment. Maybe the PCs are standing over very innocent people in a big social experiment to figure out, is there a way to make a real utopia? Maybe there is a real utopia that exists somewhere in some far off corner of our own solar system. And the PCs are like, we don't want anybody to find out where these people are at. They are our last. They are our destiny. They are our humanity made pure, and we want to leave them that way. And of course, home is battleground. Go back home and things like that. So home as battleground could also be in the mind, as well as home as battleground could be, this is the place where I lost those 3 weeks of memory, and now I've got to go back there, do battle with a big bad evil guy, do battle with the masked minotaur, and then finally uncover those memories. And then, big story hook at the very end. Sorry, you should have never uncovered those memories, because now he that realized that it was safe to leave you alive when you didn't know what you were doing, now they got to come after you. So yeah, in space, no one can hear you yell alakablam. Yeah, nope. The zipper factory is the labyrinth. Yeah. And Dead Man says the mutant was named Kuato. Was it Kuato? Yeah, he was the mutant that had he was his own twin on his stomach or something like that, with psychic powers. Drew says, my sacred fire is RPGs, and I can understand how that brings all the boys to my yard. Oh no. Well, I don't know. Maybe your milkshake is probably pretty good. don't know that for real, but I don't know. Maybe one of these days when I actually go across the pond, we'll meet. I'd love to do that. I mean, that's a bucket list thing, so I can't say I won't do it. I'll say that I don't know when I'll do it. But yeah, I'll go across the pond at some point. Hold on and let me put on my glasses so I can hear you better. So silly. I've done that before too. Oh man. When they finally show up to that utopia expecting rest, and people that have everything, and instead find the machine still running, but all the people are dead and being cleaned up by automation. Yep, that's the, what is that? That's the paperclip optimizer, PCOs. Yeah, we're going to have some paperclip optimizer machines and things like that. Yeah. Lucid dreaming out of body experience. Piece of cake in the 25th century. Yep. Shai says Hamburg, perfect place for a cruise ship. Hell's yeah. Yeah. I do. Well, my plan would be to do a Mediterranean cruise experience, since I am I'm a person of a certain age that likes cruising, but yeah, I have every intention of going across the pond. I just don't know when or where, like specifically where. Uh, but yeah. So, guys, thank you very much. Sorry about the milkshake there reference, but you brought it up there, Drew. But I love it anyway. Thank you very much for allowing me to. Sorry, this was on my mind because Douglas A. Burton, Douglas A. Burton has most recently been on the Table Talk and Heath's Geekverse show, talking about, this is his website here, and I'll copy it. Copy, and this is just about storytelling, but I think it can be used for tabletop role-playing games, and I intend on proving my point. But anyway, this is the Heroine's Labyrinth, and here's a dissertation of it in the different parts. There's like, the labyrinth defined, the labyrinth navigated, the labyrinth solved, and each of these has their own thing. Beast as ally, slaying the Minotaur, atonement with self. I just focused it down to a 12-point series, and also took like atonement with self. That's not really a player character thing, or if it is, that comes about naturally. But anyway, so I didn't make this up; someone else did, and it's funny how as this book is coming, it's just reminding me of these things. So, yeah. Thank you very much. Happy Vice Day. Yeah. Yeah. Or the Rat Utopia experiment. I don't know if you guys know about the Rat Utopia experiment where all the rats died. Spoiler alert. But anyway, the Rat Utopia experiment, where the utopian experience caused everyone to kill themselves and each other, creating the mental disorder called utopian dystopia syndrome. It got deleted or something. Really? Oh, your comment got deleted earlier. I wonder why that happened. Because I don't. No. It showed up, cleaned up by the obsidian gelatinous cube. It's so silly. But yeah. The Rat Utopia experiment, pretty nasty. Although it did prove a point that if you don't have purpose, I think that's what happens when how a dystopia happens, comes about and whatnot. But yeah, guys, have a great one. I've taken too much of your time. Thank you so much. Let's see. Yeah, it showed up. It was just late. Yeah, I'm using a system called Restream, so it's actually being pulled in from YouTube and Twitch at the same time. So despite the delay that both of those systems have, it's also being further delayed by my streaming service. My streaming service, which is Restream. So, yep. So anyway, guys, thank you very much. Thank you very much there, Hunt, and everybody else. Everyone have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for allowing me and being part of this, by allowing me to express things that give me energy and creative fuel. And I hope just a little bit, you guys can steal something from that too. And also, by the way, follow Douglas A. Burton and his Heroine's Labyrinth challenge, I guess, to the hero's journey as a framework for storytelling. And I hope more people come up with more of these framework analogies. Yep. The problem with that theory is the rats could not talk to tell the scientists what was bothering them and cause their behavior. You're so right. Yeah, yes, so right. Yeah, they couldn't. The rats are just like, I need help. And the scientists are just like, 13 rats. And the rats are like, damn it. Listen to my words. Yeah, you're absolutely right with that, with the Rat Utopia thing. You know what? Let's talk about that tomorrow. Let's talk about utopia, dystopia. Is a utopia possible, even for a short amount of time, long amount of time? the journey to a utopia, the rat utopia experiment. You know what? We'll do that tomorrow. And you know, you guys know my concept of like the Federation is a utopian government that on paper cannot exist, but should, because that's what it's about. And people who challenge it and the fact that we can't picture it, yeah, TA, yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. I'm sure you will have lots to say about it on purpose. And so bring your A game, man. You always bring your A game, but I'm just picking with you. Guys, have a great one. Thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. And we are out. Peace and tranquility.